Buddy is also good with words as he tells her to engage in shooting practice to feel powerful whenever she's down. Meanwhile, Lester makes a stop to get something to eat but sees that there's a vacancy, so he decides to apply, saying he doesn't want any roles with big responsibilities. He is interviewed and also happens to get the job. Elsewhere, Janie ditches Angela and decides to walk home with Ricky. On their way home, Ricky talks about how he started recording videos and also takes her to his house to see his dad's Nazi plate in a locked shelf as well as Ricky's collection of videos. They soon get caught up in the moment, after which they kiss. Later that night during the family dinner, Lester talks about how he blackmailed Brad, quit his job, and also got a new job. Carolyn gets furious with his choices, and as Janie is tired of their arguments, she tries to leave but Lester shouts at her to sit. He also throws a plate against the wall and says he will now start doing things in his own way. After dinner, Carolyn tries to apologize to Janie for what happened, but it ends with Carolyn slapping Janie in the face, complaining that Janie didn't appreciate the life she had. When Carolyn leaves, Janie turns to the window and sees Ricky filming her. She suddenly strips for him, and while he's still filming, his dad suddenly comes and beats him for opening the shelf where the Nazi plate was. Though when Ricky says he only checked it to show Janie the plate, he gets calmer and says Ricky has to be disciplined. The next day, Carolyn is at shooting practice, and she also gets commended by a man there. After she's through, she heads home looking happy only to get home and find a new car. When she gets in, Lester is playing with a remote control toy car and she asks him about the new car. He tells her it's a car he has always wanted, and since he had the chance to get it, he took it. Lester then suddenly notices that Carolyn is in a different mood, and as he gets closer and talks about how he misses the old her, she suddenly ruins the moment by cautioning him to avoid pouring beer on the couch. Lester gets pissed and leaves immediately. Elsewhere, Janie is being filmed by Ricky as she talks about how she's embarrassed with the way Lester acts towards Angela. She also says she wishes someone would put him out of his misery. And when Ricky asks if he could kill Lester for her, she says she'd even pay him. Ricky, however, tells her not to think like that, and that Lester is cool. He also mentions how his dad sent him to a military school and then a mental institution for beating up a fellow student that insulted him. The next day when it's time for school, Janie asks if it's fine for Angela to spend the night, and when Carolyn agrees, Janie tells her dad he's the reason why she had not brought Angela home and he needs to stop looking at her strangely. Ricky also rejects his dad's offer to take him to school, saying he'd join Carolyn and Janie. As he watches Ricky join them, he sees as Lester gestures to Ricky to call him. When Ricky's dad goes back into the house to check Ricky's room, he sees a video of Lester shirtless and doing his workout. Later that day while he's at work, Lester hears a familiar voice over the comms, and as he sees it's Carolyn and Buddy, he offers to take their orders as Buddy is kissing her. Carolyn is immediately embarrassed to see Lester, and even his co-worker talks about how Carolyn was in big trouble. She tries to explain to him, but Lester says it's good to see her happy. When she drives away with Buddy back to the motel, he tells her they might need to cool off as he wants to now focus on his divorce, leaving the car as she then cries alone. Back at home, Lester runs out of weed and beeps Ricky, who then lies to his dad about going to give Janie a textbook she forgot with him. When Ricky leaves the house, his dad stares at the garage as he meets with Lester and exchanges the product, with Lester also asking him to wrap it for him. As his view is distorted, Ricky's dad sees something else and believes his son is gay. He also sees as Janie and Angela arrive at the house, further confirming Ricky's lie. When Ricky gets back to the house, his dad accuses him of seeking pleasures with Lester, knocking him down in the process. Out of spite, Ricky says it's true and he makes his money by doing that for gay men. His dad is disgusted and asks him to leave the house, and Ricky says he'll gladly do that, getting his bag and saying bye to his mom before heading to Janie's house. Before he enters, Angela commends Lester's muscles, and as she goes back to Janie's room, Janie accuses her of being a slut while also begging her not to sleep with Lester. Angela says she really doesn't understand why Janie is against it. Just then, Ricky comes over and asks Janie if she'll follow him to leave for New York. She says they can use some money she has saved, but he says he's got enough from his business. Angela tries to convince Janie otherwise, but she gets insulted by the couple, with Ricky even telling her that she's not as beautiful as she thinks and she's just ordinary. Soon after, Lester is working out again that night when he sees Ricky's dad at the garage. He lets him in to see Ricky's dad crying, and as he offers him a hug unaware of what's happening, Ricky's dad goes in for a kiss and Lester stops him, saying he must have gotten the wrong idea. The man walks out and just leaves in the rain. Meanwhile in her car, Carolyn brings out her gun and puts it in her bag after hours of crying. She finally decides to go home, and as she recites an affirmation saying she won't accept to be a victim, Lester goes into the house and sees Angela crying. He comforts her, and as they get caught in the moment, he says he wants her and she also doesn't reject him. She asks what he really thinks of her, and he says she's the most beautiful person he has seen. And when she also asks if she's ordinary, he says she's nothing like that, making her smile. Just as he then undresses her and he's about to make love to her, she confesses that it's her first time, and suddenly Lester hesitates. She's surprised as she thinks she ruined the moment, but he says it's not her and he still thinks she's very beautiful. He prepares her a meal, and as she eats, he asks about Janie and if she's happy. Angela says she thinks Janie is in love, and Lester says he's happy for her. Just then, Angela also asks how he's doing, and even though he first says it's been so long since someone asked him, he says he's actually doing great. Angela says she's got to go to the bathroom, and as Lester looks over the picture of his family, Carolyn arrives at home as she looks at the house from inside her car. Suddenly, a gun appears at Lester's back and he's shot, with Ricky and Janie coming down to see blood everywhere. Carolyn also immediately runs into her room to hide her bag, after which she holds onto Lester's clothes in the closet. Elsewhere, Ricky's dad is seen with blood all over his shirt as he tries to get cleaned up in his house. Lester's voice is then heard narrating what he thinks of how he died, as he also draws contrasts with when he was young as well as how he was with a young Janie and his wife, Carolyn. And that is how it ended. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.